This paid message is from Glue. There are 450,000 organizations across the U.S., churches, nonprofits, and mission-driven businesses working toward the same goal, helping people flourish. But most are operating in silos. Glue is a leading technology platform serving this faith and flourishing ecosystem with a values-aligned AI platform that modernizes systems and marketing and donor solutions that expand reach. Learn how Glue is helping organizations do more at glue.com. That's GLOO.com.
This episode is part of a long series exploring how some evangelicals tie themselves to the Republican Party in the 1970s and 80s. This episode is going to refer to a lot of previous ones, but I tried to make it accessible even if you're coming in fresh. And since there's so much to talk about with Reagan, I've decided to break the topic into short episodes released one a week for the next few weeks. This is Reaganomics. From 1976 to 1979, Ronald Reagan had a very popular radio show. It was short, about 5 minutes long, and reached 20 to 30 million listeners every week. He delivered over 1,000 of them, including one about a fictional baker named Tom Smith. Smith was an inventor. Again, a figment of the imagination.
I make toys for the children.
But one day, he branches out, invents a machine that can bake, slice, and package bread. Lots of bread.
For less than 1 penny per loaf.
It was so cheap and so efficient that it fed the whole world. Tom grew rich, settled into obscurity, and the world was fat and happy.
Carbs.
But then, business taxes went up. So Tom Smith, the inventor, had to raise the price of bread to a whole penny. And there was public outrage.
A penny for a loaf of bread? That is so expensive.
The public got so angry that antitrust committees were called to break up the bread trust. The committee decided that Tom was price gouging. But if he lowered the cost, then they would say it was a sign of unfair competition. Monopoly! The unfortunate millionaire was persecuted by government and poor people who could never have enough.
Now the bread is made by the government, and loaves cost $1 each to produce.
But don't worry, the public only pays half a cent. Taxes make up the difference. That little tale was a story told on Reagan's radio show. If you're familiar, it's not too far from Ayn Rand's characters in Atlas Shrugged. Noble business people who are hounded by the lazy masses and an invasive government. A libertarian message that speaks to the woes of the persecuted rich. Delivered in Ronald Reagan's velvety, old pal voice. A few weeks back, we looked at how a New Deal Democrat like Reagan changed to a business-first attitude thanks to corporate money and influence. Became a mouthpiece against unions, funded by wealthy backers. The heir apparent to Barry Goldwater. Then took to radio, newspapers, and the lecture circuit to spread his message. Now we're examining a few key moments in his presidency. A huge task. Last time it was the Star Wars program and his talks with Gorbachev. Today, his economic legacy. Ronald Reagan remains an idol of conservatives and religious conservatives. We need to understand him, and how messages like this one about a downtrodden bread manufacturer carried on through his career and impacted the United States and American evangelicalism. You're listening to the show that uses journalistic tools to look inside the Christian church. We press pause on the culture wars in order to explore how we got here and how we can do better. I'm Chris Staron, and this is Truths.
This paid message is from Glue. Across the U.S., there are more than 450,000 churches, nonprofits, and mission-driven organizations, all united by a single purpose: helping people flourish. But here's the challenge. Most of these organizations are disconnected and lagging behind in technology. They're doing incredible work, but they're doing it alone. Glue is a leading technology platform serving this vast faith and flourishing ecosystem. They help amplify impact by powering technology and expanding reach. Their values-aligned AI platform modernizes systems, workflows, and data. And marketing and donor solutions expand reach, awareness, and long-term giving for mission-based organizations. Because when you give an ecosystem of 450,000 organizations the means to scale, communities thrive, people flourish, and together we accomplish what no one could on their own. Learn how Glue is helping organizations do more at glue.com. That's GLOO.com. This paid message is from the 2026 Moms, Dads, and Grads Gift Guide from Christianity Today's Creative Studio. Whether you are celebrating your mother, father, a new graduate, or you want to give a gift just because, these books can become companions for you and those you love, trusting that in their pages lie seeds of transformation. Visit momsdadsgrads.com to browse our books.
Welcome back. One of Reagan's biggest legacies were his ideas about economics. Through thinkers like George Gilder and Arthur Laffer, Reagan's staff adopted what is known as supply-side or trickle-down economics. Essentially that to boost the economy, the government ought to reduce spending, cut taxes, especially those on the rich, and that those rich people would then reinvest by creating more jobs. There was also a push to reinstate the gold standard. Supply side is largely rejected among economists and is contrary to historic data. I did an episode on it earlier this season if you want details. The Vice President, George H.W. Bush, even called it
voodoo economics.
But Reagan loved it. During his inaugural address, he announced,
"You and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but for only a limited period of time. Why then should we think that collectively, as a nation, we're not bound by that same limitation? We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. And let there be no misunderstanding. We're going to begin to act, beginning today."
Sounds like an easy plan. Do away with borrowing. Hello, I'd like to cancel my credit card. And decrease the national debt. Looks like we'll be eating beans and rice for a while. It didn't turn out that way. During the Reagan administration, the debt skyrocketed from $79 billion in 1981 to $185 billion in 1984. About $106 billion in 3 years, which is a huge jump. By percent, the third largest of any US president. But the other two presidents were dealing with world wars. Okay, so let's rewind to the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Earlier this season, I spent way too much time talking about Robert Taft, a conservative Republican senator from Ohio who some thought would one day become president, until Dwight Eisenhower won instead. Conservative Republicans of the time, the guys led by Taft, were all about balanced budgets, which meant they did not like the New Deal. Fast forward a few decades to conservative Republicans of today, and despite some bluster, well, balanced budgets haven't been a thing for a while. And liberals haven't been angels in that area either. High deficit spending has been a thing in most of the recent presidential terms under George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. In the Reagan era, slashes were made to government programs and benefits in order to remove $41 billion, including
reducing federal employee benefits,
The free school lunch program,
educational and social programs,
unemployment insurance,
college education benefits,
aid to the arts, humanities, and sciences,
public service jobs,
welfare benefits,
83 federal programs gutted,
with the hope of
a balanced budget by 1984.
Sorry to burst your bubble, but it didn't work out that way. And they knew it wouldn't work out. Reagan's first director of the Office of Management and Budget, David Stockman, wrote about that in his book, The Triumph of Politics. In short, he'd made some miscalculations. For one, as we covered last time, the administration agreed on boosting military spending by 7% based on the 1982 budget. But somehow, they failed to notice that Congress and the administration had already boosted it. So the increase would come on top of an already increased budget. Oops, there were other miscalculations. For one, when they pushed through the Kemp-Roth tax cuts, they had assumed that the economy would be sizzling. Woohoo, party time! It wasn't. We were actually headed into a recession, which meant big deficits in the budget. Stockman gave them options. They could put off trying to offer a balanced budget, and Reagan didn't like that. Okay, then if not that, then maybe they could slow the buildup in defense. And he was shot down on defense, which left Stockman with one other tool at his disposal. They could put off those tax cuts or impose new taxes. And in the Reagan administration, that just wasn't going to fly. It seemed that they knew they were headed for a deficit, despite the aggressive cuts. As per usual, the reductions were disproportionately made to programs that helped the poorest citizens, while the military budget skyrocketed. Tax cuts, scrapping programs, all that was par for the course with trickle-down economics. But there was another important piece: deregulating businesses. We've all heard about this before, but what does that mean? Well, if you recall, there was a big movement in the 1970s towards consumer protections through guys like Ralph Nader. For example, one thing they wanted was airbags in every new vehicle. But the auto industry pushed back. These are fake quotes, but they illustrate a point.
Putting airbags in every car will mean lots of money spent on R&D, driving up costs for the consumer.
A libertarian approach a la Milton Friedman might say,
let it be an option if people want to pay for airbags. If they're beneficial, the market will demand them.
Another thing they deregulated was energy standards in new buildings. Stuff that would help wealthy people by saving their companies money. But programs that could prevent death or injury in a car accident fell off a cliff. Then they also did what can be considered welfare for the wealthy. They gave tax relief to the oil industry, deregulated savings and loans, which would soon cause a financial crisis that required a bailout by taxpayers, and reduced regulations on businesses in general. Meanwhile, since meals for school children were cut, to save money and still meet dietary guidelines, ketchup was reclassified as a vegetable. Voodoo indeed. The Economic Recovery Act of 1981 is a good place to see this phenomenon. Let's have some fun, maybe examine income tax rates for individuals. Okay, so people at the top went from paying 70% to 50% in 3 years. A difference of 20%. But the people in the lowest bracket only had their taxes reduced by 3%. Trickle-down economics, pure and simple. It was meant to be a panacea. The idea that if you cut taxes and regulations for the wealthy, the money would flow down to workers by creating new jobs. The Tax Reform Act of 1986, just a few years later, cut taxes for the wealthiest again from 50% to 28%. The lowest tax rate, the rate for the poorest members of society, actually went up from 11% to 15%. Not a great deal. By the end of his second term, the economy had righted. Something that is difficult to attribute to one thing. Was it the Volcker shock under Carter finally taking effect? Was it tax cuts? Or a natural righting of the market? The growth of the economy in this era is often exaggerated. GNP went up 3.49%, just below what it had for Nixon, and well below that of JFK, LBJ, Bill Clinton, and FDR. As author Max Boot wrote,
prosperity, of course, was far from universal. Most of the gains in the 1980s went to the wealthy. The middle class stagnated, and those in poverty fell further behind, leading to a dramatic expansion of income inequality, a hollowing out of the middle class, and a growing political polarization between the haves and have-nots. In the 1980s, the after-tax incomes of the top 1% rose by 87.1%, while the incomes of the bottom decile fell by 10.4%.
There are a lot of reasons for that, some of which are the fault of Reagan, and some are not. For example, the decline of American unions played a strong role, as well as the decline in quality and desirability of American goods. You did not want to drive a gas-guzzling, poorly made General Motors car in the 1980s, especially when a more reliable, fuel-efficient Japanese model was available on the market. There's a great book on this called Rude Awakening by Marianne Keller. Black folks were hit harder than white. Since black people were more likely to be poor thanks to de facto and de jure segregation and racism in the North and the South. As Boot wrote,
so policies that removed 500,000 families from the welfare rolls, 1 million people from food stamps, and 2.6 million children from school lunch programs hit minorities especially hard.
And thanks to the writing of George Gilder and others, Reagan could believe that his cuts would help them in the long run. Okay, pause there. We just talked about tax cuts for things that benefit the wealthy. How do you feel about that? Honestly, you don't have to tell anyone. It's just us here, and I can't see or hear you. And I likely don't know you. But sit with that. What if you pair this information with what we know about tax loopholes that are only available to the wealthy? The economy rebounded in the Reagan administrations, but it also saw a big jump in wealth inequality. In other words, the money wasn't trickling down. It stayed at the top. We've also seen this in recent years, where corporations used tax cuts from the first Trump administration to buy back shares of their own stock, thus boosting share prices, but not helping workers. From 2017 to 2018, stock buybacks increased by a staggering 50%. Companies like Walmart and Lowe's did this, and then fired thousands of workers. And wages for employees didn't go up more than they already had in previous years. The money stayed at the top. In these mini episodes about Reagan, I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other about his effectiveness. I just want to point out the swing, as conservatives tried to recreate the Roaring '20s by lowering taxes and regulations. This stuff didn't just happen. It had been planned for a long time, and it was marketed to evangelicals by our usual cast of characters, which made it seem like red-letter theology, especially as the prosperity gospel went mainstream. Even though the Bible actually has some really harsh things to say about wealthy people. Let's circle back to where we started with the parable of the bread machine inventor. Again, I likely don't know you, and I can't hear you. As we wrap up, how do you feel about the deficits of the Reagan era? What are the implications of trickle-down economics? Do you inherently trust or distrust poor people? Why is that? Does it mean that you inherently trust rich people? And why is that? How do your ideas about wealth and poverty impact your faith? When you read verses in the Bible like Mark 25 that say it's hard for rich people to enter the kingdom of God, how does that shape your view of the Reagan era? This mini episode used a lot of sources. You can find a list of them in your show notes or on the website at trucepodcast.com. One of my favorites was Reagan, His Life and Legend by Max Boot. For the next few weeks, I'll be dropping these mini episodes one per week because this is some heavy stuff. Subscribe to the feed so you get every new episode as it's released. If you'd like to help me out financially, it goes a long way. Instead of relying on the good graces of one or two rich people to fund this program, I'm asking you, the listeners, to give $10 a month to help me out. I'm doing the show full-time so I can invest my time in production quality and research. If you want more high-quality episodes, visit trucepodcast.com/donate to help out. Special thanks to all the people who gave me their voices for this episode, including Chris Sloan, Josh Griffith, Jackie Hart, and Marcus Watson of the Spiritual Life and Leadership Podcast. Truce is a production of Truce Media, LLC. God willing, we'll talk again soon. I'm Chris Staron, and this is Truce.
This paid message is from the God Hears Her podcast from our Daily Bread Ministries, created for women seeking authentic stories, meaningful scripture, and encouragement for the beautiful and messy moments of life. Each episode shares honest conversations about doubt, grief, growth, and God's presence in daily life. Be reminded you're seen, heard, and loved. Listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts or at godhearsher.org/podcast. This paid message is from the 2026 Moms, Dads, and Grads Gift Guide from Christianity Today's Creative Studio. Whether you're celebrating your mother, father, new graduate, or want to give a gift just because, you'll find a book you love. Visit momsdadsgrads.com to browse our books.